Hey guys, welcome back to the Uncommodified podcast. I'm Tim Windsor, and I will not be your host and guide this evening, and I'll explain why. Somebody hijacked my podcast tonight. It's going to be amazing. So I am not your host and guide, but I am your introducer of this thing that is going to be called the Uncommodified Conversation tonight, an UNCORK Conversation, of course. And we're going to start off a little early with the drink on this one. So, Kris, who are we welcoming to the show? And then let's have a drink, and then let's get this thing rocking and rolling. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, because you're meeting Kris for the first time in person, Kris is my producer. He makes me sound adequate. Mildly adequate, actually, most days. Sometimes he's got a hard job because I screw things up so royally. But Kris MacQueen puts it together in the background because he's my producer. But tonight, he is the host of the Uncommodified podcast. So, Kris, who are we welcoming to the show? Why are we doing this? And what are we going to have a drink? Because it's all different tonight.
It's all we've spun it all around for you, Tim. So
yes.
we are welcoming Mr. Mayor Cam Guthrie of Guelph, the city of Guelph, the beautiful city of Guelph. So Cam is joining us, and really looking forward to this conversation. And thanks for letting us take over your podcast for an episode.
Well, you know what? It's probably going to be the highest rated one yet. So this is going to be amazing.
There you go.
No pressure, Kris.
Yeah. Well, no, it's all on you, sir.
All
right. So as Tim said, this is, of course, an uncorked conversation. The idea being that the best conversations take place over a beverage of some kind. And so let's not completely break with tradition. Tim, what are you drinking this evening?
Well, since I'm a bystander, I'm going to have a beer. So I'm having a Freak Show Crushable IPA. It's a really good one. By Flying Monkeys, one of my favorite breweries. So I'll pour that while you introduce your drinks, gentlemen.
There you go. Mr. Mayor, what are you having there?
Well, on the way here, I got one of my favorite drinks, and although it's cold out, I still go for the ice cap. So on the way here, I quickly ran through Timmy's and grabbed an ice cap. It doesn't matter what the weather's like for me, hot or cold. I'm loving the ice caps.
A man of the winter and the summer ice caps.
So
gotcha.
Cheers, thank you.
Yeah, there you go. And for me, I'm playing it really safe. I'm just having some nice herbal rooibos tea for the evening, so I'm gonna.
Wow. Well,
give us a nice sip there.
Again. Thank you.
I wonder if what we drink has anything to do with our personalities. I'm not sure.
It has to do with my weight. I'll tell you that much.
That's funny. That's actually funny. Yeah. Kris, get us on track, brother. Because I think this is going to be a good one
here. So by way of introduction here, I don't know if you remember this, Cam. Our first point of introduction. My wife and I are musicians, and we play out. And one evening we are playing, and I think it was actually around this time of year, a few years ago.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And we're at Robusta,
That's right.
Downtown Guelph. We're playing music, and I see this guy kind of jut around the corner and take a bunch of pictures, and then he kind of disappears, and then he comes back over and takes more pictures, and so in the ego of a musician, I think this is amazing and also possibly a little creepy. But then later on, you came over and introduced yourself and some mutual friends, and I've just been so impressed in the years since watching. I don't reside in Guelph, but I work in Guelph and spend a lot of time in the city. And in just spending some time in the wings of the Uncommodified podcast, you came to mind as someone who just really fits the bill of an individual who just stands out, does things a little bit differently, pushes the norm and expectations. And so I reached out to Tim and said, "Hey, would you mind if I asked Cam to come and be a guest?" And he gave me the thumbs up, and then you shockingly responded to my invitation. So here we are. So I'm a bit of a fan. I don't mind saying that. If I lived in Guelph, I'm pretty sure I would vote for you.
All right. Well, we
Um,
can maybe end the podcast there then.
there you go.
Before I
It's
ruin
kind of
it by opening my mouth any further.
Hey,
It's
but
kind of meaningless because I don't live there. But
but Kris, if you were in America, you don't have to live there. You could just take the vote of a dead person.
wow, there we go.
Never heard of that one
the
before.
contribution of Tim Windsor kicking into play there. So hey Cam, just to kind of get us kicked off here, I'm wondering just if you could give us kind of the highlights of your story. I also know this about you, that you are a drummer. You were in a rock and roll band, a touring rock and roll band back in I think it was the 90s. In fact, I did sound for you one time at a place called the Refugee Cafe.
Oh my
in
gosh, I
Cambridge,
didn't know that. Wow, that's hilarious. Wow.
Yeah,
what a small world.
That just kind of came back to my mind now.
Wow. Do we
Anyway,
do I owe you any money for that? That's why we had you on tonight, Cam. To be honest with you, you still owe me $50 for doing sound for you from 25 years ago.
No, I was the venue host. Anyway, but no, just the journey from there to here. So what takes somebody who's a touring rock and roll drummer in the 90s, and here you are, mayor of a great city in Canada. What's kind of the high level of your story?
Wow. Well, let me. I'll start by saying my family's been in Guelph since 1919, so really long time. And I was born actually in Collingwood. My parents were both high school sweethearts here in Guelph, and they got married here. But my dad started his chiropractic practice in Collingwood. My mom was a teacher. And when I was 4 years old, they decided to move back to Guelph to be with family and to kind of set their roots back here. And I was about to start kindergarten at the time, so it made sense to come back. And so, been in Guelph ever since, of course. And I've always, just growing up, I've had, I would say my parents definitely instilled in me that sort of, character or personality trait to always give back, like volunteer, serve. That should be a part of who you are, and so always did that. And then it's interesting because that sort of meshes later on in life with as a politician. You are serving. You are serving at the end of the day to the public that you represent, that's elected you, even to the ones that did not vote for you. You're still serving, and so normal childhood, high school. I didn't go to university. Went to college actually for a business course, but it was called sporting goods business. So it was a business course, but dedicated to this kind of the sports industry. And did that for a couple of years. Tried to kind of start my own little business of selling products and stuff like that in the sporting goods industry. And then got into insurance because my grandfather owned an insurance brokerage at the time, and had just merged with another company. They were needing some help, and making $8 an hour at the bike store that I was working at was not cutting it. And so got into insurance. I was an insurance broker for 16 years, and it was actually over that time of insurance and everything that I started getting into bands and started playing music and recording albums and things like that. And that was a lot of fun. I still, a little bit of regrets here or there that I wish I was still a drummer. And then I just got into politics. Like I just got into wanting to know what was going on in the city. It was more like I was like probing and kind of asking questions about how things work. And Rachel, my wife, and I got married young and bought a house right away. And so you immediately start thinking about property taxes when you're a homeowner. And so you start thinking about like how does it work? What's it going to? Why is it so expensive? And all those questions. And I just got really into it. And I started in as trying to be a counselor in the ward that I lived in 2006, and I actually lost that election. You learn a lot when you lose, and that's actually kind of a thing that I tell a lot of other people. Don't be so ticked off that you give up. You can learn a lot when you lose, and then you apply those lessons the next time. I did that, became a counselor in 2010, 4-year term. Was really pushed and encouraged to run for mayor in 2014. I did that. I won. And ran for re-election in 2018, and I won. And here I am on a podcast with you guys.
Wow.
So I very quickly, that's kind of, born to now.
Wow. I love that. Thank you. So it's interesting. What I hear is a word that came into my mind as I was listening to you talk about just this jumping into politics and the curiosity that sort of started to bubble up as property ownership and all of the dynamics of that. What I find interesting is that curiosity is something that stirs in a lot of people. It doesn't necessarily translate into making a difference, thinking, so here's a curiosity, I wonder how this works, suddenly into, hey, I think I can make a difference here. I'm curious if you can kind of, that process of taking something that just sort of bubbles up a little bit, or again, that word curiosity, and that translates into, I'm going to put my name on a ballot and possibly be rejected. And in fact, get rejected the first time around, and then come back for it for round two. What do you think is kind of living in behind that for you?
I think I would say that I do try my hardest and have always been someone to live a life of no regrets. And you just got to try stuff. And if you fail, it's okay. As I said to you earlier, you learn from failure and you can learn to do better because of sometimes when it doesn't go your way. I would say back to sort of the family unit as well, always an encourager to try things, to be curious, as you said in your question, and to keep going when things don't go your way. So a lot of, respect and encouragement came from my parents and family, and of course now my wife and family. And so I've just been surrounded by encouraging people. And I've always had a bug too for learning. Now, as I told you, I didn't go to university, but you don't have to go to university or you don't have to go to college to be a continual learner. And so even today as the mayor, like a lot of people might think, oh, you're the mayor, you know everything or something. Well, no, actually, I learn something new definitely at least once every day about people, about stakeholders, about how infrastructure works, what upper levels of government are doing. So things are constantly changing, and that enables me to be curious all the time, to learn things that are new, and that just keeps me on my toes a little bit. And so I don't ever want to come across as a know-it-all, because I want to be someone that's constantly curious and open-minded. I think curious and open-minded should kind of go hand in hand sometimes, because you don't want to sort of, well, for me anyways, you don't want to be that person that thinks they know it all. You should always constantly be curious because you can learn more, you can change your mind when new information is presented to you. And so that element of curiosity is just, it's been there, it's been encouraged, and it's still there even today.
I love that. And I mean, that actually comes full circle to something that I saw that you posted, maybe it was a week or two ago, after a council meeting, and you had whatever, you wrap up, you do that thing on Instagram or whatever. And I forget the nature of what was happening. I mean, it's not riveting subject matter in some ways.
Glad I made a really solid impression on you there, Kris. Thanks for watching my video.
What I did notice was that sort of, there was a point of clarity that needed to get established within council, and you said, well, you might be wondering what this is. Well, somebody who's smarter than I am wrote up a really good explanation,
oh, yeah, I
and then you
remember
read
that.
it.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a really interesting posture for a leader, to take a leader, a manager, somebody who is very much in the public eye, to take that posture of kind of intelligent deference or whatever. And so I noticed. I did notice that, and that sounds really consistent with what you're describing.
Yeah, thank you. I think, first of all, whenever I do try my best to always praise others, and do it authentically, by the way, because it's deserving. But it also speaks to culture, and the culture that I want within City Hall, the culture that I want to make sure is spreading outside of City Hall to the city. As a leader, it's important to say, I don't know something, someone else does. It's important to say, maybe I can't fix something, but I know someone that might be able to help you to fix something. Uh, and just as I said earlier, to say sorry when you're sorry, to say I was wrong when you were wrong. And actually, that kind of spurred me into getting into politics a little bit. Politicians, and it's weird for maybe me to say this, but they actually really annoy me. The ones that are scripted and fake and not authentic and not real, that actually is a big part of why I got into it, so that I could not be like that. And I actually, when I won, I actually remember telling Rachel and my family, if I ever come across as one of those people, you got to tell me. I got to get out of this. So, thanking people authentically is, it's needed, especially in today's world where there's so much negativity. And as I said, it's a kind of a culture thing that I want to change here at City Hall constantly too. And I don't know. I think that makes the city better in turn.
Hey, just as you say that, Cam, one of the things I think of, and again, if you're listening in to this podcast today, you're listening for a reason. I really do. I always believe that. So, and by the way, I will find my way into the conversation. So, as my listeners, don't fret. I'll be here eventually. But I just want to say, if you're listening in, like, there's a lot of wisdom that is being spoken right now about leadership, about life, about being authentic, about all of these things. And I think, as I hear you talk, Cam, and I think about the leaders that I work with, because I work, primarily with business leaders and community leaders and different leaders across the globe that I've worked with for the last 25 plus years. That ability to handle a message that is calculated at times but not scripted is really powerful, because when we come off scripted, we come off disingenuous, and that then fights against the various thing that we want. And so, of course, there is a message that we're managing, and there's some calculation in the message you're given. Obviously, as a politician, you have to be wise in the message you're given. But to do that in a way which is natural and not condescending and actually releases life to people is a very powerful gift, I think, for communicators in general. So obviously you're a phenomenal communicator, and I think if you guys are listening in, wherever world you're communicating in, I think there's something powerful being said. And in relationship to curiosity, there's a favorite quote I have of Einstein where he says, and I've quoted this before on my podcast, but he says basically about himself, I have no special talents, I'm just passionately curious.
Yeah. I
Which
like that. I never heard that before. That's good.
It's a powerful idea. And so I get the sense that you are a passionately curious person, and that's led you to a subset of things that you do. But I really love the genuineness that you approach this. And even in our pre-show interview when we connected, you're just a regular guy who's out there trying to make a difference and make it happen, and I have a lot of deep respect for that, and I really appreciate, again, you coming on and just sharing these things as Kris sort of takes us through the trajectory of this conversation tonight.
Oh, thank you very much. Let me just turn the page on my script here just a second.
Yes, appreciate that. And by the way, if anybody's hearing in the background, my cat is outside my studio right now and meowing like a banshee, and never ever comes down into my studio area. But if you hear that, it's not me crying.
Okay.
It's not me crying like a little kitten. It's my cat who's meowing in the background.
As part of the editorial team for this podcast, I can attest. I've actually never heard that.
Well, I like you. I like you more, Tim. You have cat. I got 2 cats at home, so that's good.
Yeah, I got a cat and a dog, and
I have a dog too.
Yep. Yeah. Well, see, there you go.
Yep.
All right.
There
Cheers to pets.
That's right.
Sorry, Kris. Back to Kris. There was a commercial from Tim. Back to Kris.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think that's great, and to point, like, and I just sort of share this because it is unique, and this is part of what this podcast is about, is a celebration of things that are unique and unusual and standing out for the right reasons. To the listeners, Cam actually refused adamantly to vet the questions for tonight. We offered, because that's often what we'll do, just so that we can have a good a conversation and have a sense of where we're going, and so. That was something that was really, really unique, and I think proof is in the pudding, and so that's very cool.
Well, what you don't know is that if I don't like the question, I'll just tap like my headset and be like, "Sorry, I can't. Pardon? What? Are you going under a bridge? Pardon? Pardon? I'm losing you. Pardon?"
There you go. Perfect.
Politics 101. Good.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
So into politics, because politics is a byword. That's the very thing that many people, when things get political in a workplace, that things are going south, and you and you, sir, are in politics, and so a place to serve, absolutely a place to make a difference. We certainly hope so, and I think we see that particularly on a municipal level. I think that's overlooked often in our political landscape.
Agreed.
It's a little less sexy than national politics, but it really affects our lives
More
doesn't it,
so
our cities?
than federal and provincial, for sure.
Yeah. So I hear that, and at the same, so big opportunity for making a difference and meaning and all that kind of stuff. Also predicated on this ridiculous thing of having to be the most popular candidate during an election and winning votes and all of the mechanisms of democracy and
Yep.
getting elected in.
Yep.
And I just wonder what does that look like for you? Literally, many of us in our worst nightmares are having popularity contests and social media and how many likes did we get, and you're literally having it get tallied up every 4 years. So talk to us about that. What is that process like for you?
Yeah, I think it can be difficult. You have to almost train your brain to say that democracy is greater than your position. So, and when that starts to cause friction, you have to constantly sort of remind yourself that, my goodness, we need to embrace and support and champion democracy. That's why it happens every 4 years. And the people get to choose. And that freedom that we have and that process of democracy that we have should be always tried to be elevated over the fact that you have the position at this time. The voters can be fickle. The voters can choose how they wish every 4 years. That's just the way it works. I would say in my first term as mayor, I was probably more aware about the sort of, maybe being careful is maybe the wrong way of saying it, but being more aware of sort of what are you saying, what are you doing, where are you going, what are you printing, to be so careful about that, because you're looking for re-election. In fact, one mayor I once heard, and I hope I'm not saying the wrong mayor, but I think it was Hazel McCallion from Mississauga. Or Hurricane Hazel was her. She was the mayor forever. And someone asked her once, when do you start campaigning? And she said the day after the last election. And I can understand that as a little bit of a joke. I can understand that a little bit. But we have like really big issues. And if you allow that sort of always campaigning mentality to be at the forefront, you're not giving attention to the issues that are really serious and important for the reason why you were elected to figure them out. And so it's a constant sort of struggle that you got to push it to the side and you got to do what is right. And I constantly remind myself of that. Because I ultimately, at the end of the day, again, back to the start of that first answer, or second question you asked about no regrets. I also, in this role, do not want to look back whenever I am not the mayor and say, I regret doing this, or I regret saying that, or I regret voting this way when I knew I should have voted a different way on that issue. I want to be able to look in the mirror and say, I made a difference. And I made a difference for the right reasons, not made a difference because I was trying to get reelected or I was trying to be a politician.
Well, and thank you for just kind of unpacking what that is like. I think a lot of us are on the outside, sort of looking at this, and I mean, you're obviously a person. At the end of the day, you're a dude like the rest of us, right? And so carrying and managing yourself in that. And I mean, we've talked about this just a little bit, the dynamic of being, and I've seen this myself certainly over the last 18 to 20 months. We won't speak of what that's been, what the coded language there, but I've seen you be a bit of a lightning rod for like love and some shade thrown your way. And, you know, and yet I see you, what it appears to me is that you seem to have a clear sense of who you are, even when there are people who are not being kind, and sometimes being outright belligerent,
Oh yeah.
in terms of social media. And somehow see you actually continue to have your sense of humor even in the middle of that. And I've seen lesser things crush some pretty great people. And I just wonder, how do you maintain your sense of self in the middle of that polarity? And yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, I think I would first of all start by saying again, just sort of family support. With the last 20 months and a lot of that time being forced to stay at home, who are you with? My family. So their support during this time has been unbelievable because everyone's going through so much, especially the last 20 months, and then for them to sort of then be supportive to me in my role has been, I don't know, just unbelievable. Uh, I I do like to try to make things light and fun. I'm serious when I need to be. Let me say it this way: I take issues seriously, but I don't take life seriously. I'll put it that way. Okay. And I would have to say that the ones that are really kind of throwing shade on me are I'm usually in two groups. One is they have just been Cam haters forever because of politics. And so they either ran against me or they were the group that didn't want me to win or they were the group that just they'll never I don't think ever really want to get to know me or whatnot just because I won the election and they can't believe I did. And then during this last 20 months, I would say it is, probably the loudest people of the 5% that are, not adhering to public health guidelines and have differences of opinion on vaccination and regulations from the provincial government about shutdowns and things like that, which by the way, no mayor chooses that. We have to follow what the provincial guidelines are. And so because I know that it is probably a minority, I feel a little bit more comfortable in myself. And I know that there will always be people kind of nipping at my heels a little bit, but I also know that there is a massive silent majority out there that probably thinks Cam's doing the best he can and everything's going kind of okay. And I don't need to see the like from them on Facebook and I don't need to hear them say something. They're just quietly going about their lives and trying to make things work and they just either one don't know or they don't care because they're trying to make their lives work and they're trying to get their kids to soccer practice and they just don't care about that kind of stuff. So I think I'm able to be comfortable in myself. I will say this, Joe. I'm sorry, the answer is maybe a little bit long, but I will say it doesn't mean I'm immune to some of it though. That hurts. There has been there has been a lot of stress this last 20 months, and I think it's interesting when we talk about sort of mental health when you see when we see professional athletes as an example, say I'm having some mental health, I have to take a break or whatever. You see like the love and the support, rightly so, that comes to those people or other leaders. But if a politician ever said, I got to take a break, like I'm not doing well, I need to take care of myself. It doesn't matter what stripe they are of a politician. I almost feel sorry for them because I can guarantee you they would barely get that love. And yet they're a human being too. Especially politicians at all stripes, at all levels during the last 20 months. No one put on their platform also lead through a pandemic. Like that, this came out of nowhere and
Yeah.
there's been a lot of stress. And I think that some of the stuff that I've had come my way, although I know it's the minority, has been doesn't mean it's not still hurtful, but I try to maybe deal with it in a funny way.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that's
Interesting.
powerful.
Interesting. And Cam, as you talk about, first of all, I appreciate your just your total transparency, and transparency is transformational. It helps people figure out how we can relate to one another and in our humanity. And, whether you're a leader in a political arena, or whether you're a leader in your family, or whether you're a leader in a corporate world or a community group, it doesn't really matter. But there is something really powerful about just being honest and human, just entering into all of our humanity. I think the challenge in so many of these things is, you're right. I think what we do is we look at the people around us, whether they're politicians or whether they're people, celebrities, color, whatever, and we begin to dehumanize them and not really recognize at the end of the day they're just like us. I often say,
they're trying their best.
It's the price of how in a belly button, and we are fundamentally can be really mean to one another. We probably need to go back to school, to kindergarten, and learn some better lessons about how to be kinder, nicer people. But I think it's really important. Again, if you're listening into this conversation, we all have issues or things that we want, hills we want to die on. And it's one thing to die on a hill. It's another thing to kill somebody else on your way. Listen, if you want to find a thing you want to die, a hill you want to die on politically or socially, or frankly, I don't care.
Yeah.
But the problem is that so many people on the way to die on that hill of that issue, they actually do the most carnage on their way to that higher ground. They think they're trying to get higher ground, and what they're doing in the process is they're actually just chewing up people in the way. And so
Agreed.
the impact on one another that we bear as we work this out together, and how we can hold tension with one another. That's something I've been really thinking a lot about lately. This idea of holding tension. It's this tug of war. I guess to remain balanced, you need equal and opposite pressure on both sides of the rope.
Yep.
That's how we maintain balance. But we've got to live in that tension. And again, so if you're listening in, I really want to speak to you personally. I want to call you to a higher sense of behavior. Die on the hill, but hold tension. And in the process, do not bite and devour and absolutely kill one another, because at the end of the day, that's all we have. All the other structures are quite meaningless. It's the human fabric that keeps us all together. And if you hear nothing in what Cam's saying, what I hear him saying is, at the end of the day, we're all just people trying to do our best. We're great people trying to do a great job. And sometimes our greatness gets smothered. It gets smothered by our own crap. It gets smothered by the circumstances of life. But at the end of the day, our fundamental belief ought to be in one another, I think, is that we're great people trying to do a great job. And if we could hold that tension, it'd probably be a better place at the end of the day.
Yeah, I have to sometimes remind myself and others that, especially in politics, that it's about the policy, not the person. So a person, like there's 12 counselors here and then me. That means there's 13 different opinions on policy. One could go this way and one could go a different way. And they're allowed that opinion. And it's just an opinion, and they got elected because of whatever their opinions are, so we got to hear it. So but it doesn't mean you rip them to shreds for the person that they are. Try to keep it focused on the debate around the policy that we're working on for the community.
Well, and that's a really powerful thing to remember too. Speak to the issue, not to the individual. I mean, that's sort of conflict resolution 101 in terms of having conversation take place, and yet the evidence is scattered all around us where we lose that. And I know that I'm as guilty as the next person. If you say the wrong thing, and I haven't had enough sleep, I can jump into the bandwagon pretty quick too.
Yeah, fair enough.
Not Tim though. Tim is the most.
That was his
even
cat
guy I
speaking.
know.
In the
Oh
background.
yeah, I'm very unopinionated, as you all know.
Hey, I just want to turn the corner a little bit as we sort of start to, Tim was going to land the plane, I'm sure, in the not too distant future. But I did just want to touch on really quickly, because I think it's really central to what I've seen, is there seems to be, Cam, a high commitment to engagement, like meaningful engagement that seems in keeping with all the things you've shared, transparency, trying to be present to people and just not be scripted and all of that kind of stuff. And I know, because of some of the things that I do, that engagement is costly. Engagement is energy. output most of the time. I mean, maybe you're just a ripping extrovert, and that's the fuel that lights your fire. But I'm wondering in that, firstly, maybe, oops, sorry about that. I'm wondering.
Don't worry. I know a really good producer who can post-produce that out.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Forgot to put my focus on
Yes.
and shut everyone out there. No, I'm wondering. So, engagement. Where did you learn that? Like, why are you so committed to it? And how do you self fuel so that you don't kind of get lost in all of that? Because I know that's personally very costly.
Yeah.
To be that available.
Yeah. So remember when I talked about how I didn't want to sort of be that normal politician and be authentic, and that includes transparency. And the curiosity side that we talked about earlier too, when I learned something new. So taking all of those things, like wanting to tell people about something that's new, wanting to be authentic, wanting to be transparent, wanting to engage, to hear opinions or to give opinions, was much easier when I started as the mayor with 6,000 followers. And today I believe I have like 40 or 44,000 followers. And I'm not saying that in a braggy way at all. I'm just saying it was much easier to manage because all of a sudden you have an open door policy now through social media where anyone can get at you for anything. And that's questions, inquiries, and opinions, positive and negative. And then the world that we live in now over the last 10 years has become so accustomed to wanting instant information, instant answers, instant respect, that they don't understand. And, I'm also in meetings all day. I'm sorry I didn't answer your tweet back in 2 minutes. I'm also the mayor of one of the fastest growing cities in Canada, and I have a meeting with the prime minister today. Like, I'm really sorry I can't get back to you within an hour. I think what I've done over the last little while about sort of the fuel part of it is I'm trying to put some boundaries in place because I have to. I don't have staff. A lot of people think, oh, you have someone that on staff that does your social media, right? I'm like, no, it's all me. All me. And they're like, what? They can't believe it. And so I find now what I do is this. Twitter is conversational and posting of information. Instagram, funny, 95% of the time. Facebook, posting and goodbye. And that's the way I'm kind of rolling. And I think if I tried to do engagement and answer on all of those platforms, I couldn't even be here tonight. So I have really put boundaries in place to make sure that I'm treating them differently in how I use those mediums, and it's working really, really, really well. Really well.
Hey, Cam, can I just because I just want to tuck in here because, again, if you're a leader of a larger organization or corporation or anything like that, and you are a listener, because I do have those listeners in lots of different places, there's some real wisdom of what Cam just said. Again, creating engagement, giving people access, but putting some boundaries on there that actually are healthy and sustainable is a very, very critical discussion that leaders have to understand in the world that we live in for social media. I think there's a lot of wisdom in what Cam said, and regardless of what you use as a strategy, again, I think this is about energy management. It's about if you're going to engage, you're going to have the energy to do it, and you have to have freedom has some boundaries. It has to unfettered freedom leads to a subset of other problems.
Yep.
So there's this. You're giving people access, but at the same time you're containing it in with a wise strategy that's maintainable over the long distance. Because at the end of the day, this isn't a sprint. and you know that, Cam. This is a marathon.
Big time.
And
Yep.
you can't run at a sprint pace every day when you're in a marathon, or you're going to cack out, and then you're no good to anybody.
That's right.
So
Yep.
I think it's a brilliant strategy. And I think, again, if you manage complex social networks in your world of communication and stuff like that, just listen to the wisdom there about how do you contain that, but how do you remain accessible? This is a tremendous balancing act. Again, I come back to the tension, living in the tension sort of this. But it's really, really an important discussion. Maybe what you need to do is pause the podcast right now and just write a quick note about that. And come back to that later and ask yourself, what does that mean to me, what Cam said? Because there's some super wisdom inside of that. Because if not, you're going to cack out on the journey. You are going to die at the side of the road. You're going to give up, and you're going to crawl in the fetal position on the side of the road in this journey of life if you don't have sustainable expectations of yourself and create a container in which people can have access to you if that's what you need in your world, but to do it in a balanced way. There's some real wisdom in that conversation. And Kris, it's a brilliant question that you've asked, and Cam, really appreciate the wisdom that you're giving on that.
Thanks. And I will say that I wish I kind of done maybe some of those boundaries on the different mediums I've used. I wish I kind of done it a little bit earlier, because I think a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago maybe, I was almost in that fetal position on the ground. And so I think I wish I had sort of learned a little bit of a lesson on boundaries and how to use different mediums of engagement and open door policies. Because I've gone from 6,000 to 44,000. If I keep going, if I'm honored to keep going in this role, does that mean 50,000, 60,000? I don't know. Maybe I cap out at 45, whatever. But if it keeps going and keeps snowballing and growing and growing and growing as it goes down the hill, like I certainly won't be able to handle it by myself. And it's interesting too from another perspective that I remember like 10 years ago when I was starting to kind of use social media, some of the older, let's say, demographics of politicians were kind of making fun of me. Like, what are you doing that for? That's ridiculous. Why are you spending all your time on that? Why would you ask people's opinion? Why would you answer those people there? Why would you post this? Why would you post that? I mean, I got made fun of by a lot of politicians, and now they're all of a sudden like, oh, maybe I should be on social media now. Maybe I should be doing that. And so I think I use it really as an engagement tool, and I think it's fantastic. It helps me get a pulse check of the community on different things too. It's almost like dipping your toe in the water. It's like, I have this idea about this policy. What do you think about lowering the speed limits to 40 kilometers or 30 kilometers an hour in your neighborhood? Boom, 2,000 comments that say so, like it does enable me to get a little bit of a pulse check on something before we actually go to vote on something later on as a council. And you can bet your bottom dollar all the other councilors are reading the responses that are on my stuff, because they want the insight too. Mm-hmm. And staff as well usually.
I hate to take over here, but I got a question I got to ask you. Can I ask you a question? And listen, respectfully, if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to. But I would think if I was you, I'd be using this partly as a play around traditional media sources that take my message and contain it and shape it in ways that I lose control of it. I would think that this is a brilliant strategy of that direct connection. It has an unwieldy part of it, but it does allow you to go around traditional. If this is 20 or 30 years ago, Cam, your main connectivity with people would be through, what reporters said about council, and the minutes that people aren't coming and reading all the minutes. You give them the synopsis, but it's the reporter that would come in there, and then they would decide how they were going to shape that message. By the way, for a very short period of time when I didn't work for myself, I was a publisher of a business magazine for Southam, so I know a little bit about how we work in the media.
Sure.
So I would suggest that this gives you a brilliant opportunity to work around traditional media sources that may or may not be friendly or helpful in the connectivity that you need.
Yes to all of that. Now, I will say that so far, we are fortunate in Guelph. The media has been always very fair, very fair. And even on the, the articles that make me kind of go, that's maybe not exactly, what I said or meant, or, oh, that's kind of coming out a little bit rough. It's always been fair.
Okay.
The ability for me to correct things, though, is definitely there now through the
Mm.
mediums that I have available to me. So it is not just, as you said, as I said, it's not just a pulse check or dipping your toe in the water to get opinions. It does enable me to also spread a message as well, and my voice. Sometimes it's my own voice. Hey, this is my opinion. And sometimes I'm speaking on behalf of council. I'm speaking on behalf of the city of Guelph. As my role as mayor, you are the spokesperson and you have to speak on behalf of the city as well. So people definitely can feel when I'm speaking in that role versus maybe when I'm speaking more on my own opinions. But yeah, the ability to correct, to set the record straight, to give the right context is definitely there with the ability that I have with the amount of social media that I have. So that I've never looked at it maybe that way, I guess. But if it does ever rear its head where I need to use it, then it's there
Hmm.
Okay.
for sure.
Awesome. Hey, listen, Kris, you got one other question for Cam, and then we're going to bring this plane in for a landing. It's been an awesome conversation, and by the way, I think we should do more of this because you did all the heavy lifting, and I get to just take the ride, Kris. I appreciate it. You got another question that you want to send Cam's way, and then we'll wrap things up.
Well, I mean, I don't want to steal your wrap up thunder there, Tim. But I think I would just kind of
Steal my thunder, Kris.
I think I would just ask Cam. So, I mean, you've been at this now for a chunk of time. You've got some perspective. What do you think is the big thing that you've learned, the most valuable thing that you've learned over the tenure of the last number of years? You're coming up. You're coming up on, I guess, next year is the next election, right? In
Yeah, next
2022, is that right?
October, but who's counting?
Yeah. So you talk about being a very curious person, teachable, learning. What's the thing that you think that from your very unique experience, vantage point, that you've learned, that you think would be a helpful perspective maybe for our listenership?
Well, I would say maybe two things. One is maybe on the more politics side. Maybe I'll answer the other one on the more personal side. So on the more politics side, I would say that as much as some people, a minority people, may want to uh, project or create a narrative that there's always chaos amongst sort of your local municipal government, or even upper levels of government. The real on the ground reality is that there's probably a lot more in common amongst us all than not, and there's a lot of unanimous votes, but it's only the ones that aren't unanimous that get the headlines. Um, and that as much as I'm trying, so are 12 other counselors, so is staff, and there's a lot more sort of you know, teamwork that's been happening, I feel, especially here in my city, that happens. And I think that could translate to even private sector boards, nonprofit boards, and
Mm-hmm.
agencies, where, there's probably a lot more that is in common than not on decisions that are being made at boardroom tables or political tables or chambers like the one I'm in right now. On the personal side of things, I would answer that pretty quickly. Just maybe don't take everything so personally. I think in in my first term, especially as mayor, I was a councilor for 4 years first. In my first term as mayor, it was rough, and I think I was just trying to, I was new and I was learning, and I made mistakes, and I think I just needed to own things and not take things so personally, and then apply the things to the future. Here I am now in the second term, and I believe that the second term has gone better for me personally, because I had learnings from that first term and to not take things so personally. So those would be sort of maybe the two things that I would highlight on that.
That's great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Cam. So Cam, listen, I just have a specific question, and then we'll sort of wrap
Sure.
things up. And again, Kris, thanks a lot for just really being the custodian of this conversation tonight, and some really crafty questions, and I appreciate that. And for those of you who don't know Kris, I mean, Kris is not only my producer, but a great friend, and Kris is very thoughtful about what he does and how he thinks about life. And I know when Kris came to me and suggested that we have Cam on the show, it was really out of a deep appreciation for his observations about Cam. And so really, I want to thank you, Kris, for being the originator of this conversation tonight, because I really believe it's a powerful conversation, and it's provocative, and it ought to be stirring people to think about their life differently, and how they lead and how they think and who they want to be. And it's just a really, really powerful conversation that if you allow it to, if you're listening, it should provoke you to think a little bit differently about how you interact with people around you in your world. So it's a great conversation, and thanks again, Kris. Appreciate that. Cam, when you're bringing this idea of uncommodification, for me is an idea I've been playing with for about 20 years, and it came out of this idea that at the end of the day, that a lot of us, we transact in commodities, or either ideas or products or anything kind of thing. The uncommodifying factor at the end of the day is what we bring to it, the uniqueness that we bring, the unique expression that we bring. So at the end of the day, when Cam Guthrie is bringing the unique thing that only Cam can bring in a room, and let's give a context. So if you're in a room where there's fair enough, where there's divisiveness, where there's tension, what does Cam bring into that thing that brings a unique contribution, even in the midst of tension? When you're at your most unique best, making a positive contribution, even within tension, what are you doing? What is Cam bringing that maybe only Cam can bring?
Okay, I will answer that with two things. The first one would be, I really do try to bring levity even into the arena of friction. So there's always a moment, and you have to choose it wisely, where you can disarm the heaviness of the friction in the room with some levity. So I try to be that guy that does that. The other thing that I do is I tend to seek out the people that I know really don't like me in the room, and I go to them first, and I stick out my hand and say, "Hey, how are you?" And I shake their hand and I say, "Thanks for being here." And I do it right away. And I mean it.
Interesting.
But I sometimes, like if I'm at an event and it's a 2-hour event or something, I don't want to be eyeballing those people across the room for 2 hours. I mean, that's not good for anybody. It's not good for me. So I go to them first. I put out my hand. I say, "Hey, it's really good to see you. Thanks for being here." Done. I don't know, and I mean it authentically, but it does disarm sort of the in-person friction that may be occurring as well. So levity and showing a meaningful way of being open to the fact that even those people that maybe don't like me, they're citizens in this city that they love, and they're trying to do their best too, with a difference of opinion, and I accept it in a professional way. So that
Excellent.
I hope that.
You know what,
two
Cam?
things off the top of
Brilliant
my head,
advice.
but-
And again, brilliant advice. And again, if you're listening in, I would challenge you: the next time you go into a room, or into your family, or into your workplace, or wherever you go and find that person that you have the most tension with, and go out and shake their hand and thank them for their contribution that they're making. Do it don't do it disingenuously. Do it with a genuine understanding that we need each other in this journey. That's a powerful, provocative idea. And by the way, we're coming up to Christmas, guys, and so you're going to spend a lot of time with people that you probably have some tension with. Call it the great family. It's the great family elixir of Christmas. It's going to come up soon. The holidays are coming. You know what? Stick your hand out to somebody in your family that maybe you don't often do. It's a great piece of advice. And man, you will uncommodify the room and change the temperature, maybe the whole climate in the room when you do it. Listen, guys, thank you so much for listening in today. Cam, thanks for your time. Kris, thanks for hosting this tonight. You know what? I may be able to take a vacation now. I may not even have a job when I'm done here. I may no longer own the Uncommodified podcast. Kris MacQueen, you can take it back. I'd love for you to do that. Kris, I really appreciate you as a friend. Cam, you're an amazing guy. Appreciate your time in the midst of everything you do. Thanks for taking time to come on my show and spend some time with our listeners to provoke them to think differently. And listen, do me a favor. As you uncork all this in your life, guys, as you take what you've heard and you spread it out into the worlds that you live in, do me a favor. Send me an email at tim@theuncommodified.com or look me up on social media. I don't have 44,000 followers. So if you want to look Cam up on social media, actually, after you listen to this podcast, and thank him for his contribution. Do whatever you need to do. But let us know how you're interacting with this stuff and pushing it into your life. Thanks for listening and have an excellent day.